This is a story about haunting at a general hospital. Before we start, please hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. Mark Ellison had worked facilities at a general hospital in Mississippi for almost 9 years, long enough to know which air handler rattled before rain, which doors stuck when the humidity came up from the river, and which nurses would call maintenance for a flickering bulb before they called their own supervisor. He was 36, steady with his hands, patient with old buildings, and not the kind of man who believed every noise had a ghost behind it. Hospitals made sounds. That was what he always told the new guys. Pipes knocked. Elevators settled. People heard crying in empty rooms because people were always crying somewhere in a hospital, even after visiting hours. But Mark did not like the basement. Nobody did. The basement sat under the older south wing, where the concrete floor stayed cold even in August. Down there were storage cages, oxygen tanks, broken beds, and the body holding room, where deceased patients waited until the funeral homes came to take them away. During the day, Mark could make himself go down there without thinking too much about it. At night, the place felt different, like the whole hospital above him was breathing, and the basement was the part of it that never got air. The call came in at 11:47 on a Thursday night. Loretta, the charge nurse on the third floor, sounded tired when she said, "Mark, I hate to bother you, but basement corridor B is flickering again, and sometimes the light doesn't even come on. Security said it is making the cameras blink out. Can you come in and change it before morning?" Mark almost told her to wait until first shift, but then he heard something behind her voice, a low tremble she was trying to hide. "Is it just the light?" he asked. Loretta went quiet, then said, "I hope so." Dwayne went down to check the panel, and when he came back up, he said somebody called his name from behind the holding room door. "But Mark, nobody signed a body out tonight, and nobody signed one in." Mark sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the ceiling fan turn above him. Then he reached for his boots and said, "I'm on my way." By the time Mark got to ST, Bartholomew, the main lobby was half dark, with only the emergency lights glowing along the tile like red eyes. The overnight receptionist buzzed him in without looking up, and somewhere far away, a monitor beeped in a slow, tired rhythm. Dwayne, the security guard, waited near the service elevator with a styrofoam cup of coffee held in both hands. He was a big man, normally loud, normally joking, but that night he looked smaller somehow, like the hospital had taken some of the air out of him. "I'm not going back down there," Dwayne said before Mark could even ask. Mark lifted his tool bag. "That bad?" Dwayne stared at the elevator doors. It was my mama's voice. She has been gone 12 years. She said, "Dwayne, baby, open the door." The elevator arrived with a soft bell, and Mark felt the hair on his arms rise before the doors even opened. "Old wiring does weird things," he said, because someone had to say something normal. Dwayne shook his head slowly. "Wiring does not know my mama." Mark rode down alone. The elevator dropped beneath the bright hospital floors, past surgery, past laundry, past the places where people still moved and complained about coffee. When the doors opened into the basement, cold air slid around his face, damp with bleach, dust, and something sour underneath it, like flowers left too long in a closed room. Corridor B was blinking at the far end. The fluorescent light above the holding room pulsed on and off, turning the hallway into frozen pictures. Storage cages, oxygen tanks, a yellow mop bucket, a closed gray door with a small window painted black from the inside. Mark opened the electrical panel, checked the breaker, and told himself the sound behind him was the building settling. Then the light went out completely. In the dark, something tapped on the inside of the holding room door, once, twice. Then a woman's voice whispered through the seam, "Mark, I'm cold." Mark's hand froze around the screwdriver. Nobody downstairs knew he was there yet. Nobody except the thing behind that door. Mark backed away from the panel slowly, because every old instinct in his body told him not to turn his back. The holding room door sat 20 feet away, closed, locked, silent now, as if it had never spoken at all. He pulled his radio from his belt and pressed the button. "Dwayne, you copy?" Static answered him, soft at first, then swelling into a wet crackle. Through the static came Loretta's voice, but it sounded wrong, stretched thin and far away. "Mark, do not open it. If she asks for a blanket, do not open it." He swallowed hard. "Loretta, where are you?" The radio hissed again, and this time, the voice became an old woman, gentle and shaking. "Please, honey, just a blanket. I am so cold." Mark knew that voice, not personally, but from the way families remembered people in hospitals. Sweet, southern, polite even when scared. Earlier that week, a nurse had mentioned Mrs. Bell, an elderly patient who died before sunrise, with no family close enough to come before the funeral home. The name appeared in his mind before he wanted it there. Mrs. Bell. The lock clicked. Mark watched the handle turn halfway, then stop. The door eased open an inch, and a blade of darker darkness appeared between the frame and the seal. Cold poured out. Not basement cold. Not air conditioning cold. This was grave cold, deep ground cold. The kind of cold that passed through clothes and skin and touched the private place behind the ribs. From inside the holding room, metal wheels squeaked. Mark raised his flashlight, and the beam shook across the opening. For 1 second, he saw covered gurneys, white sheets over still shapes, toe tags hanging like tiny paper tongues. Then every sheet lifted at once, as if something beneath them had taken a breath. Mark stumbled backward and hit the opposite wall. The corridor lights flashed back on, bright, too bright, and there standing in the open doorway was Mrs. Bell. She wore a hospital gown. Her gray hair hung damp against her cheeks. Her wrist tag dangled from one thin arm. But her eyes were not old, and they were not human. They were basement black. "You fixed the light," she whispered. "Now we can see you." Mark ran. He did not think about his tool bag or the panel door hanging open. He ran down corridor B while the light strobed above him, and behind him, every gurney in the holding room began to roll, slowly at first, then faster, metal wheels screaming against the concrete. The elevator doors were open at the end of the hall. That was impossible, because he had not called it. Inside stood Dwayne, pale and shaking, holding the doors apart with both hands. "Come on," he shouted, but his voice cracked on the last word, because he was looking over Mark's shoulder. Mark dove into the elevator, and Dwayne slapped the button for the lobby. The doors slid closed, almost closed, then stopped against something soft. A hand rested between them. It was small, gray, and wearing Mrs. Bell's wrist tag. The emergency phone rang once, even though nobody had dialed it. Mark grabbed the cold fingers and pulled. For one terrible second, something squeezed back. Not hard, not angry, patient. Dwayne started praying under his breath. Mark pulled with everything he had, and the hand slipped free, leaving the wrist tag caught in the closing doors. The elevator climbed. When it opened on the lobby floor, Loretta was waiting with 2 nurses and a crash cart. She saw Mark's face and did not ask what happened. She only whispered, "You heard her too." Mark looked down at his palm. The wrist tag was folded there, damp and cold. The printed name was not Mrs. Bell. It was his. Mark Ellison. Date of death tomorrow. The hospital replaced the basement light the next morning with a new LED fixture that never flickered again. Mark quit 2 days later, and he never returned to ST. Bartholomew, not for work, not for a patient, not even when his own doctor moved there years later. But every few months, after midnight, his phone still rings from the hospital's main number. When he answers, there is only basement static, a squeaking wheel, and a sweet old woman's voice saying, "Mark, honey, the light is out again."
Thank you for your support. And thank you for tuning into the darkest horror stories of your life. Some of the stories are based on true events or experiences. Please do us a favor. If you could hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Never listen alone, and stay tuned for a new horrors and stories.